Hello, this is Crystal with Sweet Light Plans. Today I am going to be doing our Bible study over the Book of Esther. I started actually reading it this week and I have not actually filled it out, but let me go ahead and show you what I do have already. So this is the setup that I have right now. I am going to be listing my prayer list over here on the side, and then I'm just basically going to fill this spread up. On Monday, September 9th, I'm going to go ahead and fill in whatever we go over today. I don't know exactly how many days I'm going to get to do. I have already read several of these chapters already. That's why they're already highlighted. But I'm going to go over them with you and write out while I have you here with me. So let's go ahead and go over Esther chapter 1, the King's Banquet. It says, these events happened in the days of King Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. At that time, Xerxes ruled his empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces. The celebration lasted 180 days, a tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. So this was like obviously over the top for all of his nobles and officials and everyone that he wanted to celebrate. On verse 5, it says, when it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people, from the greatest to the least, who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard of the palace garden. The courtyard was beautifully decorated with white cotton curtains and blue hangings, which were fastened with white linen cords, and purple ribbons to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. Like, wow. Gold and silver couches stood on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Wow, I can't even, imagine seeing that awe. That is just, like I said, over the top. On verse 7, it says, drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine reflecting the king's generosity. By edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. At the same time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Okay, so in verse 10, it says, Queen Vashti deposed. On the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in his high spirits because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zether, and Carcass. Okay, I'm not saying I know how to pronounce these all right. I'm just trying to pronounce the way it looks. Y'all can totally correct me in the comments. Okay, so verse 11, to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. But when they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger. Verse 13, he immediately consulted with his wise advisors who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he always asked their advice. So there were these people that he always went to, and he was counseled by them before he made any decisions, which is something that we all should do. If we have something major going on and we want to discuss it, we need to go to someone who has knowledge and the right spirit to lead us into what we should do. So anyways, on verse 13, it says, he immediately consulted with his wise advisors who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he always asked their advice. The names of these men were Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarnish, Meres, Mersina, and Mermugan, 7 nobles of Persia and Media. They met with the king regularly and held the highest positions in the empire. What must be done to Queen Vashti? The king demanded. What penalty does this law provide for a queen who refuses to obey the king's orders, properly sent through his eunuchs? Memucan asked the king and his nobles. Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also every noble and citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti has refused to appear before the king. So that's something major. Everybody was starting to worry about that. Before this day is out, the wives of all the king's nobles throughout Persia and Media will hear what the queen did and will start treating their husbands the same way. There will be no end to their contempt and anger. So, if it please the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of the Persian and Medians that cannot be revoked. It should order that Queen Vashti forever banished from the presence of King Xerxes, and the king should choose another queen more worthy than she. When this decree is published throughout the king's vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives. The king and his nobles thought this made good sense, so he followed Memucan's counsel. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler of his home and should say whatever he pleases. Ooh, so that's where it starts. It's the drama. It already started. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back in here. I have my pins ready to go. I have a Vela Beautiful, a pretty like aqua color to kind of match with my spread. And then I also have a Fudunsuke Tombow pin. And then my 08 Sigma Micron 08. I love this pen. And a Sharpie permanent marker. This one I like because it has like a really fine tip, but it's like a marker. So I have these ready to go. I'm going to probably start with this one. I'm going to go ahead and write down the chapter that we're going over. So it's Esther chapter 1. So 1 through 21. So let's go ahead and maybe I'll use this pen. Just in case, I should probably take this out because I don't want to like write over anything underneath. So let's go ahead and pull this out. Okay, so let's go ahead and write Esther. And then maybe I'll do it in this chapter. Okay. Got that down. Let's go ahead and pull the pin out. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and write in how King Xerxes told 7 eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, but Queen Vashti refused to come, and this made the king furious, and he burned with anger. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in on my spread. Okay, so we did Monday, September the 9th for Esther chapter 1, verse 1 through 21. Okay, so I have this filled out. I'm going to go ahead and start my prayer list. I'll probably just use my Sharpie and just write it out. Prayer list because it's so small and I need it all to fit. So my prayer list. And I'm just going to jot down a couple of things and people. What I put over here on the side, like in my spread, are like immediate things that like I need to for sure pray for, and that I don't want to forget, like things that are people are struggling with that I know about, or certain situations. So I just kind of make a list over here on the side as the week goes. Obviously there's more people that need prayer and things like that come up, so I have 2 more slots I can fill out, and we'll go ahead and move on to chapter 2 of Esther. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendant suggested, "Let us search the empire to find beautiful virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Haggai, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. And after that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti." This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. At that time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shammai. His family had been among those who, with King Jehoshaphat of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. So they were taken away from Jerusalem and into Babylon. We have to remember that these were Jewish people that had to leave their land, and they were living in a different land. Okay, so they were actually in Babylon. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin. Okay, so we're talking about Mordecai. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. So I guess like in their language, it was Hadassah, and in Jewish language, her name was Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Haggai's care. Haggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids specially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. Every day, Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her. Before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatments. 6 months with oil myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and anointments. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening, she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Shagaz, the king's eunuch in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. So no one is to go to the king. You need special requests from him, basically. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted his younger cousin Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter of the 7th year of the reign. And the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. So there we go. She already made it to replace Vashti. To celebrate the occasion, he gave a great banquet in Esther's honor for his nobles and officials, declaring in a public holiday for the provinces, and giving generous gifts to everyone. So I think it's important to realize that in this chapter, it was pointed out how her nationality and her family background was never really told, but because she was a Jewish, she was different. And the Lord always keeps his hand on his people. So his people at this time were only through the bloodline, and were only the Jewish people at this time. Because those who follow the Lord honor him in everything they do. And that is how she was raised. That is how she lived. And I believe that that is why the Lord gave her favor and made her queen over all the other women. I'm sure they were all beautiful, but for some reason, the king always looked at Esther like she was something special, because she was. God set her aside. Okay, so even after, on verse 19, even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. She was still following Mordecai's direction, just as she did when she lived in his home. Mordecai's loyalty to the king. In verse 21, one day as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. When an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the two men were impaled on a sharpened pole. This was recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign. So that's very interesting. So we have this little note here. Let's go ahead and read this. Esther shows what God can do with people who are adopted into his family and are willing to serve in his kingdom. Since Esther was an orphan Jewish girl, it was unthinkable that she would become queen of Persia. But her older cousin Mordecai raised her to serve God, which prepared her to accept her royal calling. That's perfect. It's almost exactly like what I was saying, but they would say it better. Esther allowed God to use her influential position with King Xerxes for his glory. She had faith and courage to save her people. She was used by God to do great things, and she has gone down in history as someone who lived a beautiful life. Oh, I love that. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill out Tuesday, September the 10th. And we're going over Esther chapter 2. And I'm actually going to go ahead and write that right here. Like, it's literally in the middle, but it's going to look cute. Okay, so Esther. Okay, chapter 2, 1 through 23. Okay. Okay, so let's start probably right here on verse 9. How Haggai, Hegai, was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. And I think that's even right here is where we start to see God's favor. So he treated her very kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. And he was the one in charge, like, over all of the women. Okay, so I think this role is very important. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. So let's go ahead and put that in. Okay, and then again, what's super important, in verse 20, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. Okay, so that pretty much sums up chapter 2 for Tuesday, September the 10th. Okay, so this is how it's looking so far. We're going to go ahead and move on to September the 11th for Wednesday. And it's going to be for chapter 3. So let's go ahead and I'll probably write it right here. Oh no, my marker is starting to run out. Okay, so it's going to be chapter 3, 1 through 15. Okay, so on chapter 3 it says, sometime later King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. So Haman was moved up. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman. Okay, so Haman was basically in power second to King Xerxes, making him, again, the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect. So they bowed down to show him respect whenever he passed by. For so the king had commanded. But Mordecai, which was Esther's uncle, refused to bow down or show him respect. Then the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, why are you disobeying the king's command? They spoke to him day after day, but still he refused to comply with the order. So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told him he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. Oh my goodness, that's some hate right there. That is definitely some rage. He wanted to go beyond just hurting him. He wanted to hurt his whole entire, like anybody that was the same nationality as he was. So in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim, to determine the best day and month to take action. And the day selected was March 7th, nearly a year later. Then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, there is a certain race of people scattered throughout all the provinces of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. Yeah, that is so important right there, to know that these certain group of people literally kept themselves separated and apart from the government and laws that were going on. They were not going to let anyone else basically be in power over them the way God should be. And that is exactly how we should be living even today. We should always keep our Lord as our Lord and not let anyone else or anything come before. So let's go on. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live. If it please the king, like he's making it sound so good for him. If it please the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed. And I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury. The king agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. It literally says that he's the enemy of the Jews. The king said, the money and the people are yours to do with as you see fit. So on April 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned and a decree was written exactly as Haman dictated. It was sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of the respective provinces, and the nobles of each province in their own scripts and languages. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring. Dispatches were sent by swift messengers into all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. Literally all on a single day. This was scheduled to happen on March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. So no, they were literally going to slaughter and kill these people. Oh, how scary it must have been for these Jewish people during that time. And like, I can't imagine having to face that, like knowing, okay, in a year from now, I'm gonna die. Like, we're all going to die. Can you imagine having to tell like your family, your kids, your, little nieces and nephews and cousins, like explaining that to them? Like, that's horrible, right? Like, what to have to think about that, and the anxiety and fear that puts into your heart, right? Oh, that's crazy. Okay, so in verse 14, a copy of this decree was to be issued as law in every province and proclaimed to all people so that they would be ready to do their duty on the appointed day. So it was like telling them, on this day, you're going to go and kill these people. Like, that's crazy too, to have to be that person that has to go out and kill these people. At the king's command, the decree went out by swift messengers, and it was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa. Then the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa fell into confusion. Wow. Okay. So let's go ahead and fill out Wednesday, September 11th for chapter 3, 1 through 15. Okay, so I'm going to put down how Haman was promoted and Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Okay, now on verse 8, it says that there's a certain race of people scattered throughout all the provinces of the empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So let's go ahead and put that in verse 8. Their laws are different from any other. That's like so important, y'all. Like, it reminds me also of how Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, how they also were a separate group of people who refused to bow down. And I want to encourage you to never bow down to anyone else other than your Lord and your Savior. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this session up. It's 3 days worth, Esther chapter 1, 2, and 3. And since I'm going out of town this weekend, I'm going to try to edit this so I can have it sent out as soon as I can. And we'll go ahead and finish up the rest of the chapters as soon as I can. And I want to thank y'all for being here. I hope you enjoyed this Bible study with me. And I pray that the Lord would be glorified in all that you are and all that you do and how you think and how we live. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.